Hey there, how are you? Welcome to the studio. I'm just getting things set up for the day. You notice I don't have my hat on today, which means it's not a painting day. That's right, so not a painting day. Hi Denise. Not a painting day means that I am gathering supplies. Hi Heather. I'm gathering supplies for our workshop on Friday. So it's going to be a short video today, and hi Amelia. It's going to be a short video today because I just want everybody to gather up their supplies, hi Nikki, and get ready for Friday. So morning Heather. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up and stop walking around because I'm making everybody dizzy, I'm sure. There we go. Yeah, so today we won't have a painting day for now. What we're going to do is just go over supplies needed and things like that. Tomorrow we'll do substitutions. So I've taken into account what everybody needs, everybody wants, that sort of thing. And what I've decided to do is just like a pure mixed media base. And it's going to be based on a certain technique. So there'll be a number of we have a lot of beginners, so, and also we have a lot of more encaustic or more oil painter, and we've got a lot of, hi Sophie, got a lot of talent out there, but we also have some newbies who are real keen. And I thought, since some people want encaustic and some people want Maria, hi Dulce, so some people want encaustic, some people want mixed media. I'm just going to go with, because we only have 1 hour, right? So it doesn't mean you have to complete your, hi Emmy, hi Kevin. Kevin, hi. It doesn't mean that we have to finish our project today. It just, or on Friday rather. It just means that we're going to complete a small piece based on a small project, right? So I'm going to go over the supplies that I've gathered. Anybody rewatching this then will be able to gather their supplies kind of quickly. Or Gavin, hi. It's crazy. I was just thinking about your art this morning. So anybody who's not familiar with Gavin's art, he's from New York City, and I discovered his mixed media paintings when I was in New York City years ago, and I just fell in love with his work. So I recommend you all pop over to his website and check it out. Gavin, you could even give your link and to your website, and everybody would be sure inspired by your work, which is incredible, by the way. It's really funny because I was just thinking about your work this morning when I was thinking about the project that is going to be based for our lockdown open studio. So lockdown open studio means we are encouraging creativity and making art out of what you have at home. So the part of this project is going to be, or part of this product that we're doing on Friday, hi Terry, and Joan, hi. Part of the project that we're working on is working with what you've got, but also working with what you know. So I'm going to pull out the piece I brought from home that this project is going to be based on. Okay, so it doesn't matter if you love my painting or not. It doesn't matter. I made it a long time ago, and that's not making excuses for the quality of the painting. It's just, I think it's a really good example of completing an image when our painting is image based. Okay, so I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm going to show you the piece. So this is what it looks like. It's a diptych. It's in 2 panels. And what I want you to notice about this painting, like I said, it's not whether or not you like the painting. It's about how the painting has been executed. So this is what we're going to use as our base. And the reason I've chosen this painting as our base is because a lot of times people come to me with photographs, right? So this would be a photograph. It's not like I took a photograph myself of Albert Einstein, but I did print one. So you can see what he's got going on. There's like a fern in the background and there's all kinds of stuff. Now I could just frame this and say I have a picture of a framed photo of Albert Einstein, or I could turn this piece into a piece of art, which is what I intend to do. So this was once a picture of Robert Wagner, the composer, right? So again, it was like this. It was just a photo of him. And it's not, I don't know why I thought the picture was so great. You can see his name still down there. Oh, it's Richard. Sorry, not Robert. Richard. See, I don't even know. Anyway, so Richard Wagner was a composer, right? And is that right, Joan? That's crazy. So this was one of my sample boards, apparently, from a class that I made when Joan was in my class. So anyway, so yeah, so it's basically taking a photograph and turning it into a piece of art. So it doesn't have to be a person. I tried to go through my photos this morning to see if I could find something, and I was a little stumped because I can't find a lot of my photos. This is one of my mom and my brother and sister and I when we were young. So that one, it again, more people, right? So it's not helpful because you could, if I can open up my drawers here, oh my gosh, now I'm really showing you the mess. So I have these fantastic drawers that unfortunately just become pits. Okay, here's a photo that I took of an old-timey fire hydrant. So something like that. So if you don't have, there is a mural, picture of a mural I took. So it doesn't really matter what photo you are working with. It would be best though if you could either print it. And it doesn't have to be laser. It can be laser. It can be inkjet, whatever you have at home. I noticed when I was out the other day that even Shoppers Drug Mart had their photocopiers down, so you can't go in and photocopy right now. So just make a print or like print something off. What we're looking for, I can get a kid look forever. What we're looking for is something that's on regular bond paper. So we're not looking for photo paper. Photo paper is that really heavy paper that's almost like a cardstock, right? So let me see if I can find something. I don't even have anything. I try not to keep that in my studio because it's really difficult to work with. So you want to have something that is just printed on thin bond paper. So if you have a printer at home, print something off. If you don't, if you only have a magazine, let's say you only have access to a magazine or something like that. Let me see if I can find a magazine in this place. Maybe in another drawer. Here's a book. So a book or a magazine. Let me grab both. They're both good idea. Gonna go down in here. You guys are getting the real tour of the studio here because I'm going through all my old stuff. Magazines. Here we go. Let's see what we can find in romantic homes. Okay, so if you don't have access to print a photograph or something that you like, then we are going to go through a magazine and find something that appeals to us. So what appeals to you? Totally up to you. How you prepare it, though, is going to be more important. So if anybody tuned in yesterday, you will remember that I was saying if you're going to apply wax, okay, so this is not necessarily as important if you're not going to apply wax, but if you're going to apply wax, we want to make sure that the images you're choosing aren't printed on the back. And in this case, they are printed on the back. So I'm going to show you how to deal with that if you do intend to put wax on it. If you don't, this is all like just pictures of bedrooms. So what did I expect, right? Okay, so you know what? Actually, I like that chair. So let's just say I want to use that chair, and that's going to be my image. I'm going to tear it out of the book, out of the magazine. And I have books that I rip up as well. So if I went into one of my books, generally I photocopy out of this book because it's really heavy paper. So if you go to yard sales, garage sales, things like that, people are often like just giving away these books, or even thrift stores. They just give away books. I'm not sure why nobody wants books, but anyway, they're fantastic for photocopying. You find some great images. So this book isn't ideal because it's got, like, everything can be cut out. Do you see what I'm saying? So why would I bother incorporating? So I'm going to try to get you to choose something that has a background already that you want to change. So bad book example. So, all right, so let me flip this around again. Whoops, I'll put this here. Okay, so if you had your magazine paper, right, because that's what, if we decided we were going to use this chair, one of two things. So it's not that difficult to cut out. I could cut out this chair, and that could be my image. But for, actually, you could do either one. If you want to cut it out or leave it, it's up to you. So either one's fine. But what is important is that the back, because there's print on the back, that the back gets white gesso or white paint on it. Okay, so you want to totally block this out. And it's just, even primer, if you have primer lying around your house, like maybe you're, I don't know, priming some walls or furniture or something like that, you could use white, as long as it's a light color, so light gray, whatever you want to use. Just, you want to cover the back with something so that the bleed through doesn't happen. On a photocopy, we don't need to worry about that because the back's already white. Okay? For those of you who are moving things into encaustic, you do know that sometimes when you iron, or when you're fusing your wax, the image itself can get patchy. So you can always seal the back with white, primer, chalk paint, whatever you want, acrylic paint, it doesn't matter, as long as it's dry. And then that will help prevent that blotchiness when you do apply wax. So it's always a good practice. I never have time and I never think about it, and so when things get blotchy, I just accept the blotches. But if you have time, really good practice to seal the back and not use photo paper. So photo paper itself is just an emulsion that sits on top of paper, and then if you are applying any kind of wax, and sometimes even mediums, glues, gels, whatever you're using, it can actually change the color because the emulsion is moving and reacting to each other differently, and it smears and whatever. So regular bond paper or magazine paper or from a book, seal the back if you can. And we're choosing one image, right? We're choosing one image such that in this painting, we're changing out the background and we are taking it from a photograph to a piece of art. So I'm going to get up close so that you can see some of the details in here. And I think the reason I love this painting and I ended up keeping it for myself was not that I have any attachment to Richard Wagner, but it's just the little details and things like that, and the colors. It just really speaks to me. I have no idea why. I love the little distressed finishes and things like that. I'm going to teach you all that on Friday. And then up here, you'll notice, like, obviously my image ended here, so I had to be able to continue that up. And so little things like this, like the little bits of collage and all that, that's what we're going to talk about. It's just integrating things and making something very simple into something more, I hate to use the word beautiful because it's like I'm saying, oh, my painting's so beautiful. But what it is saying is that it's now art. Okay, so that's what we're going for. We're going from a photograph to art, and that, if you can do that well, where somebody can't see the transition, how you went from a photograph to a piece of art, then I'm going to turn that around, then you've totally won. Okay, so let's go over tools and materials. I'll repeat this again at the end, but I'll just say now in case anybody is wondering. I've had a few people tell me that they have absolutely zero art supplies. So if you need anything by Friday, I am putting together, I'll put my camera around, I am putting together 5 kits, mixed media kits that will be available for sale, and I will put them together. What they have in them is some canvases, some wood panels, including 2 that are already primed, because I took the time this morning to prime them for you in case you just didn't have time to do that. And then assorted paint colors with a black and a white. I'm going to call this the COVID paint kit, because like your glue stick is already used from the studio, so there you go. The black is lumpy because it got some air in it or whatever. And then the white is lovely. The colors are assorted. I tried to give everybody a decent assortment, but I will have to add a red to some of the ones that just have a lot of yellows and blues. So don't worry, I'll get you a red in there. And then there's a paint palette. And then there's a whole bunch of goodies down here. I'm going to put in some papers as well, so that you have, you know, some images and some tissue papers, and like I said, there's some napkins, and then the rest of the things, there's a scratching tool, there's a palette, and there's a set of brushes down there. So I'm putting these kits together, and you're basically helping me clear out the studio as well, so I'll give them to you guys for a steal. I'm picking up my glue today, so we'll be able to make up a container of glue for you. And yeah, and then we can figure out how we're going to get these kits to you. We still have till Friday, so I'll have them assembled within the next hour or two. And then they'll be available either for pickup in the west end of Ottawa, or if you choose the, what do you call it? I think it's like a $5 flat fee shipping. I'll see if my husband can deliver them to you somewhere, and as long as you're within the Ottawa city limits. Okay, so anyway, let's get back to that. We'll do that one afterwards, but I did have people emailing me and asking me about that, so I just wanted to go over that with you. So let's go over our tools and what we're going to need. Okay, so you will need some kind of an apron, so or paint clothes, right? Because acrylics are messy. These are just very basic tools, obviously. You'll need a palette. A palette can be anything. It doesn't need to be a specific palette. You'll need some kind of assortment of brushes. And again, we're not being picky, right? Because we're just talking about creativity here. So I chose the worst brushes I could find to show you that anything will work. A pair of scissors. A knife, if you have one, like just a cheap little knife, or like, I don't know, I tend to do a lot of scratching and cutting, but also if you have a knife, then you can also cut out fine details. So, and a cutting board. So I always use my table as my cutting board, but if you are cutting something like this, you may want to use a cutting board as well. And if you're comfortable just with scissors, then scissors is fine. And then something to scratch. Right? So some kind of scratching tool. So what can be used as a scratching tool? If you have a toolbox at home, just go through that. Anything that's sharp and pointy and, you know, it's not going to break when you press on it, will be fine. So I don't recommend using your good kitchen knives or anything like that. Just look for things around the house. A lot of times I use the ends of like really pointy scissors that I use for sewing. And then glue, which my container's empty right now because I have to go pick it up today. But some kind of glue. So we'll talk about substitutions tomorrow, but if you don't have gel medium or you don't have Mod Podge, then we'll talk about homemade glue based on either white glue or whatever it is you happen to have. That's what we're going to use, okay? So, and a water bottle. I always like to have a water bottle of some kind. If you don't have an empty water bottle, see what spray bottles you have that maybe you can combine cleaners or put it into something else, wash it out really well, and there you have a spray bottle. So for me, a spray bottle is always essential to have, but again, it's totally up to you. This is just an empty plastic cup that I'm going to use for water. And paper towel. Hi, Janice. And paper towel of some kind. Doesn't need to be the blue one, just some paper towel or something to catch the water. All right, so those are your basic tools that you will need for the project on Friday. And now let's get into papers. Hi, Heather. So let's get into papers. So the background is going to be a pattern of some kind. So I'm going to move all this out of the way. Try not to make you guys sick as I move this camera around. So I often use scrapbook paper because they already have patterns done for you. I'm just going to go over here because I found some interesting ones that I saw in this drawer, and I'll pull them out as we speak. So you know these big scrapbook pads that some of us have lying around from 10 years ago when everybody was into scrapbooking? So if you go into these scrapbook pads and you look at them, I mean, some of them are just pattern, but some of them are really interesting because the colors speak to you or the background speaks to you. Try not to get anything that already has the design done though, right? Like let's say you fell in love with this barn board with the daisies. Like let's just pretend that this was your favorite scrapbook paper ever. And technically you could just take this then and put it in a frame and call it a day. So, okay, Heather, I will answer that question in one sec. So basically you're going to want to pick something that has color and pattern that you like. So a good background paper doesn't have an image already in it, and if it does, you could be comfortable knowing that you are covering over it, okay? So let's say, I like this one a lot. So this one is a bit more of like a distressed, this is another one, yellow. I'm going to go with this one because I really like the colors in it. All right, so if it had an image, I would want to be perfectly happy covering up the image, but overall I like this one, so I'm probably going to save this one aside. So if you don't have scrapbook paper, here's another scrapbook sheet. So this is a great image of, or a great example of a scrapbook paper that already has an image in it. So the back of this paper is great because it has lots of pattern, lots of color, lots of texture. It's black and white, it's gray. I like that one a lot. This one, however, the other side of it, has an image of a mermaid already on it. So if I were to use this as my background paper, but I wanted the image, then it's not really background anymore, right? Now it's considered foreground. So the first thing we're looking for is okay, so pay attention to this. You want one background piece of paper that will cover your board entirely, okay? So I'm going to show you, this one here is just a blueprint, right? Photocopy of a blueprint. Here's another scrapbook paper. Let's say, because I do this often, I use old books and magazines and stuff like that in the background. So I'm going to try to find, if I look through here, I'm looking and looking and looking, and I'm not finding, oh wow, look at that. Don't be old-fashioned. Latest sex discoveries now revealed. Look at that. So you can buy the Sexual Study. So I'm going to try to look for one that doesn't have a lot of photos, because what I'm looking for actually is the text in the background, in my opinion. So, but let's say you wanted to keep one of these as your main image, then you would take this photograph and what you would do is white out the back, right? So either using gesso, white paint, or chalk paint, or what was the other thing I said? Primer. So make sure you want to use a primer if you're going to use as your top image. But as my back image, let's pretend I wasn't happy with that. I could use books. Sorry, Sophie. So you could use books. You could tell these are not very scripted, right? My talks with you guys. This is how I spend my day in the studio talking to myself. I forget sometimes you're here. So I would go into a book and I might take out, like, let's say 4 or 5 sheets that would cover my board. Okay, so I'm going to pull this out. A couple sheets. Sorry, it keeps telling me not to rotate the camera, so I'm just going to put that down for a sec. All right. So I'm going to take a couple sheets out. And then we have to look at the board. So remember that if you guys are doing this alongside me, it's going to be best for you to choose something manageable. So let's just grab some of the boards from my kits so that you can see what I consider to be manageable in 1 hour. Don't forget, we're trying to finish this in 1 hour, right? So everybody is always like super excited to, you know, whip out a big panel of 36. I guarantee you won't complete it in an hour because you're going to be telling me, hold on, don't move ahead. I'm going to be working on no bigger than like 5 by 5 or something for the sample because I want to be able to move quickly. And so if I want to be able to move quickly, here's another example. If you don't have panels or canvases to work on, I grabbed this out of my garage, little piece of 2 by 3. So a piece of 2 by 3, a piece of 2 by 4, any kind of old wood you have lying around, anything like that will suffice. Because I tell you, when this is all collaged up and painted, look at my guy, he actually fits on there. So maybe I will use him. Like it's actually interesting. Oh, you know what? I have something like that done in my studio already that I can show as an example. It hasn't been completed yet, but let me grab it and show you. There we go. Okay, so I was working on these wood blocks earlier, and I thought it might look neat coming out of the wall. I'll lean it against the wall so that you can see it, because it doesn't have a hole in it yet. There we go. Okay, so it's just like a little wood block, but you can see I've wrapped around a photograph of that elk, right? And so if that had a little hole in it and that was mounted to the wall, it might actually look kind of cool. So it was just an idea I was toying with when I found this piece of wood. And so yeah, so get creative with your panels. It doesn't need to be like, you don't need to rush out and buy art panels if you don't have them. So like I said, even the little piece of 2 by 3 will work just fine. So what you are looking for though is your background paper to cover your board entirely. So if I were to use a piece of paper like this, right, I could wrap this around, and yes, that covers my board, so I wouldn't be concerned about that. If I were piecing together, I could use these and just collage them on like this, okay? So I could just use some book paper if that's what you like. I really like text in the background because I often find when I'm scratching, I like the lines of maps and I like the randomness of bits of text coming through. So if you are thinking that sanding and scratching might be something that you might enjoy, then I would choose something with a tighter pattern as opposed to like something like this, which just has a really open pattern. It's just color more than anything. Because if you scratch through in this area, you're going to get like a darker green. If you scratch through in this area, you're going to get a white. So it's not as interesting in the background. But if you think that that might be something you like, then try the idea of a map or of print or something like that, because it is kind of fun, and sometimes it's even very revealing when little bits, like I'll show you up in this pane, like when little bits show through, right? So it is interesting. I guess there's no other way to put it. So yeah, so we had decided that I liked this one. So if this doesn't cover my board entirely, so I could do one of two things. I could cut a piece off here and put it down here, or I could you know, wrap it around, or I could just, whoops, don't rotate my phone, it keeps telling me. Or I could just chop off a little piece of wood, go down to the saw in my basement, cut that off. So there's lots of options, okay? Lots of options. So what you don't want to leave yourself short with though is not having the background covered at all. So, because we won't have time to deal with it in the class. So if you know how to deal with it in your own time, then fantastic, go for it. But in class, we're going to be putting on one background, okay? So if I put on one background like this, it has to cover the board. So I'm going to dismiss this board for now, or I might change my background paper And then I would choose something that the paper actually covers fully. Okay, so that's it for background paper. It's not really complicated. It's just your board will need to be covered. If, I noticed in the comments yesterday, Tracy had mentioned that she had already collaged her background. And so if you all have a second to go over and pop over and see Tracy's comment from yesterday, do so. Tracy is brand new. So of course she's just asking a million questions, and my feedback for her would be fantastic. Keep going. So what I wish I had the technology to split screen this to show you guys what I'm talking about. But in her background, she has lots of little islands created like this, right? Like she's got one thing with 3 things or 4 things floating in there. And that's great, but for our background's sake for Thursday, so she doesn't have to redo that, but if any of you are going to be following along Thursday, what we need is one uniform background, okay? That's all I have to say. We don't need to have bits and pieces and that sort of thing. You need one uniform background. So I'm gonna go with this for now. And let's just say it'll go with that. I haven't, oh, actually I'm gonna use the long one only because this is the photo I have with me here. I also have a few other panels, so I could use a panel, but I did say I was going to use Albert Einstein as our example. And the reason I'll use him as an example is because we will be able to reference this photo then afterwards to see the difference, just like with this, right? When you go from photo to piece of art. So I'm going to use that chunk of plywood or 2x3, and my job, I don't have to do it ahead of time, but if you want to go ahead and do your uniform background, you can, but we will be doing it in class. So you will be doing your background, and then here's the thing about scale. So you want to make sure that the image you print is to the scale of the board you're working on. So this is really big, and I don't encourage you to do anything that big unless you plan to go super simple. If you're working really small, choose a small image. It just makes sense, right? So if we were to go with that chair, let's go back to that example of the chair. So the chair right now is on this big piece of paper. So if I'm looking at panels, I'll try and put this on with one hand while holding this. I need a tripod. So you see, if I cover that up, the chair goes from here to here, and it's got a nice little breathing room around. This panel is actually like the perfect size for this chair. Alternatively, this chair could also have a bit of room to breathe, right? So if I put the chair down at the bottom on this bigger panel, you see we have much more space between here and here. So that could, like the moose painting, that could now open up lots of possibilities for what else is in this painting, right? So on this size, it's a painting about a chair, and maybe I decide, you know, there's I don't know, maybe I'll cut out a cat and put him on the chair. But on this one, right, maybe there are some birds in the sky, or a hot air balloon or something like that, right? So you could do something else depending on the size of the board you choose, but your image should fit the panel to some degree. I have some other sizes here, a 6x6. Let me show you that one. So if I put the chair on the 6x6, it covers the thing absolutely entirely. There's no extra room at all. So the chair is, it almost gets a little bit cut off, but as you can see, the chair is the painting, right? So maybe we decide to change the color of the chair. Maybe the chair is going to be yellow with white polka dots. So we could play with the color of the chair and use the essence of the chair. You know what, maybe I'll do that one simultaneously so that anyway, we'll see what we can do on Friday, but I may decide to do that. And now I'm just thinking out loud as I'm doing this. And this one is great because I can cut the chair out. So for those of you who are painting out the background, anyway, we'll decide on Friday. I'll try to make this as fast as possible. Maybe I can get 2 done in the same time that you guys are doing 1, so that I can answer questions. Because so those of you who have an item you can cut out, like if I can easily cut this chair out, it would make my life really easy. If I can't, then I have to, remember the way we blended the mousse? Then we have to deal with that separately. So let's say when you guys are looking for your image, something that can be cut out would be better for this project. And I'm only telling you that not because I don't want you to learn the other technique, but it'll be harder to do the other way than to do this way. So with Richard Wagner, as you can see here, he had a background behind him, but he also has hair and he also has all these things going on. So the only hard sort of structure about his body would be here, and then around the contours of his face, and then it gets lost, and then here, and then right up kind of like to his hairline, and then hair gets a bit funny when you start cutting it out because it looks a little wonky. But that's really the only definite cutout area that I could do. So maybe like my mousse as well, right? So my mousse, as you can see, he can totally be cut out. So, because I've cut him out many times. So in here, the whole image was placed on, but I intend to paint out the background. But for our purposes, if you can cut out your image, it just would be simpler. So let me see what else we can do. I'll be right back because I think, there we go. Okay, there we are. All right. Okay, so what else I want to talk about? So that's your image you're going to be choosing, right? It's going to be something that you can cut out. Oh, I have some more examples here that I didn't even see I had. So something like this, right, that is already defined for you, I wouldn't use, okay? The reason I'm going to suggest you don't use it is because when we put this in the middle of a painting, I'm going to grab my scrapbook paper and let's pretend that this is a painting. So if this is your painting and I glue this here, what do we have? We have a scrapbook page, right? So we're trying not to make a scrapbook page only because a scrapbook page is quite crafty and we're trying to make fine art here. So if I were to take this and put this here, like I said, scrapbook, if I were to take this and put a frame, again, a bit more scrapbooky, but if I were to take Mona Lisa and put her on a smaller canvas, let's say, and paint out the background, maybe she's in, you know, a sky of, I don't know, let's say blue with white polka dots or whatever, and we want to use her as our image, then we're transitioning this from a piece of art, or sorry, from a photograph to a piece of art. If we just leave it as it was and stick it on our background, then we haven't got a lot of room to make art out of that. So that's another thing I would caution you against when you're doing your, this is another one that I've made this image layering different graphic art pieces. And so him, I often cut him out, but that's when I use the X-Acto knife because I have to lay it down on a piece of, or on my cutting board, and I cut it out that way because it's a lot easier than with the scissors for me. So I would use something like that. Another good example of something you could cut out, where the bunny gets kind of fluffy, you could even just tear the paper a little bit, and then where it's really sharp, you could cut it. That would be a great image to use. I've used him in several different things, and when you change the background enough, it's really interesting to have an animal set amongst sort of a surreal painted background. It's really kind of fun. Here's another photograph that I took. impossible to cut out, right? So look at all those little details and stuff. That's impossible to cut out. So what I do with these is I tend to do that other technique where I told you I would tear on the outside and then I would incorporate the background. So can I leave you guys for 1 second? I think I did something bad with the door. 1 sec. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I wasn't sure if the wind was hitting against the door or anyway, no big deal. I thought maybe somebody was knocking, but it seems so strange to have somebody at the door these days. There is nobody at the door. So, yeah, so background and top image are two different things. Background is more about pattern and color that appeals to you, but you're not afraid to cover the whole thing up and lose it, okay? So top image is something that fits the size of your panel. Again, try to work small, and because once you learn all these techniques, you can keep notes, you can use that as your visual tutorial, and then you can always go back and then repeat the process on bigger and bigger and bigger panels. Of course, remember, we've been talking about going bigger. Each time you go bigger, you need to change the size of your images, change the size of everything that you do, and it all just takes time. That's why I think the moose that I just completed yesterday was the most time-consuming painting that I painted in front of you guys. So, because it was so big. So next thing that you can find for images. So I love having books and things like that because you can cut out little random words. Magazines, same thing, if you like text in there. But my favorite way to add text, and that's why I chose this painting, was because you can see the text up here. So what I did was with this text, the I cut out of a book. Or a magazine or something, because I thought that was fun. But the rest I used some black ink, and if you don't have a stamp pad, we'll use paint. But some kind of a text stamp works really well if you're stamping on tissue paper. So white tissue paper, or if you don't even have white tissue paper, I have a solution. Go into your napkins, because I'm sure you all have napkins at home, right? And napkins, if you open them up, trust me on this one, napkins are, like, I've never seen a napkin that isn't 3-ply. So the first layer of napkin always comes off super easily. This is the one that you just go, okay, I'm done, right? So this back one works just as well as tissue paper for stamping on. So if you keep this back layer of a napkin and you stamp words on it, or if you have stamps already, like I know Tracy has stamps because she showed us in one of her first videos her rubber stamp collection. So you can stamp onto the paper, directly onto this paper, and then use that and collage it in. So I always recommend that. We'll go over that on Friday, but I always recommend that over or stamping directly on your painting, because sometimes it doesn't work, or you make a mistake, or you put the letter upside down. So always stamp onto a piece of tissue and then collage it in. So much easier. So if anybody is buying a kit, I have also included a package of stamps for you. So, all right, so that's the back napkin. Always save that piece because it's really great for collaging in. Now, napkins themselves, I just told you they're always 3-ply, but you saw how easily that back one came off. And now I am going to have to find and separate these two layers. I cannot use a napkin in when it's 2-ply, because what happens is when you apply this to a painting, it looks great until it dries, and then the back layer will stay adhered to your painting and the top layer will separate, and that happens like after it's dry. So you want to make sure that you are separating your napkins, and this can be really tedious, especially if you're someone like me who 3 weeks ago, if you notice, before, that was just before the lockdown, I left my prescription glasses in a store that is closed. So I have lost my glasses, and yeah, that's me and my excuses, but I was still able to separate the napkins. So a little trick for how you separate napkins is just to tear it beyond this little perforated edge. So, pardon me, the perforated edge is how they press those 3 layers together. So if you tear beyond that, then you can absolutely more easily separate those napkins. So, and depending on the quality of the ink, sometimes even the middle part still has what they call the ghost pattern. So it's actually the ink that bled out of that one into this one, and it's like sometimes a more ghostly layer of napkin. And I've actually found these sometimes to be way less harsh than this layer, and I've used this layer over this layer. So when you do separate them, pay attention to that, because that's going to be great. So napkins are awesome for adding a little shot of color or a little bit of text or whatever they may be. So same with tissue paper. So this is printed tissue, and it's just got these metallic dots on it. And from one side they're silver, and from the other side they look like white on white. So like translucent versus opaque. So little pieces of napkin, little pieces of tissue paper go into, this is like just gift tissue. Napkins, if you go through your napkins, like I said, some of them are really pretty, some of them have big images. Like if you look at the size of this flower, it's only one like that. So if you look at the size of that flower, if we were to put that on a canvas this size, you see what happens? That's the entire image. So it doesn't leave a lot of room now for a painting unless you want to teach yourself how to paint. Then you could use all this as sort of your paint by number, right? So that you want to pay attention to when we're talking about scale again. Also, when we were talking about scale, when I just found this 6x6, I just thought of something interesting. If you wanted to, you could also exaggerate an image, right? Like if I fold this around, you see how he's cropped, and I told you before that the eye fills in a lot of detail for us. So you could use a bigger image than your board, and then have less background to deal with, I guess would be the way to put it. So anyway, so keep those in mind when you're looking at your ratios of background to image. Other things you may want to have on hand would be a piece of sandpaper. I've put some of those in the kits as well for anybody who's looking for a mixed media kit. I will have 5 of them available by the end of the day. And yeah, so sandpaper. What else could we have? Tissue papers. I told you stamping. Textural things are also kind of interesting. So I might include something textural only because people tend to gravitate towards texture. So a lot of mixed media students start too early to put texture in the painting, and I believe texture is built through layers, not like one layer, bam, texture. If you put too much texture in too early, then I find it looks contrived and it's hard to work around because it didn't just happen. I like when layers become your texture. Okay, so by carving in, by putting your paint on thick, by adding more paint, by scratching through that paint, by peeling some of that off, I believe that that is how we build texture in a painting. We don't just like, boom, there's texture. Because the contrived nature of it to me is just a little bit, oh my God, time's up again. How does this keep happening? Okay, so textural elements. This here is just like a little scrapbooking detail. That can be really interesting if you want to do something like this and build that in. Okay, so let me put that over here so that you can see it. So if I wanted to highlight something, I would put this over, and because this happens to match really perfectly, it's a bad example. But what I would do is I would actually paint this in and integrate it, and then sand it back a little bit so that this doesn't look so much like an outline. I would have it as part of the painting, and then, but it's highlighting just by it being raised. It would be actually highlighting one thing. So I think I've covered all the materials and things you may need. Don't be afraid to also have, I'm going to turn the camera around. Don't be afraid to have a little pile of bits. So this is the stuff that I just call like my bits, and it's just stuff, right? It's just little scraps of paper. Some of it looks pretty bad because it's just like jammed in the bottom of the drawer. But I tell you, when you have little bits and you need to tear off like a little piece of something, it's just a quick way of injecting a little bit of color and I guess like the illusion of texture and all that, even though it's just a piece of paper. Or here, this little pink paper with the gold dots, a little whimsy here and there. See, like that paper actually with this cute little butterfly here, they would be a great relationship in a painting that was all very neutral. Let me grab it over, bring it over to Wagner and show you what I meant. So let's say I found this painting a bit too serious and I wanted to add a little pink, pop of pink down here. I could then add that cute little butterfly up there with a little bit of different pink, and then that relationship with this down here might change the tone of this painting a little bit, right? So if I was going all serious, I would use the moth that's just in the black and white, and I wouldn't put this one, but maybe I wanted to put, let's go with like this one, right? So not that polka dots are serious, but you can see that the relationship would be very different within the two things. So I think that's it for today. Tomorrow we will go over substitutions. So your questions and all that stuff, you can pile them all up today, tomorrow. I'll look at them beforehand. I'll write them all down so we can talk about substitutions, but then you can text me as we're going or message as we're going, and I'll keep it live, and then I'll just walk through the studio and we can look up and talk about substitutions for anything. Remember, this is our COVID Creativity Home open studio. So we are not looking for, having all the perfect art supplies and all that stuff. For those of you who have messaged me that you are absolutely stuck, I am putting together 5 kits that I will have available up on my website probably within the next hour or two. So at ChristinaLovisa.com, and if you can't find them, just message me and I will send you a link to them. This would be probably for Ottawa people only because we don't have time to ship them anywhere. Ottawa people, if you have no way of doing a pickup in the West End, I have 3 options available. I have my house, I have my studio, and I have the store. We could arrange one of those 3 places tomorrow, and if that didn't work out for you, then you could always do the shipping option, which I think is like flat rate $5 or something like that, and then I would ask my husband to go and deliver them to you. So yeah, we have plenty of options, and I don't want anybody to be stuck. Like I said, these kits I'm just throwing together now, and hopefully they will suffice for what you need. I think they have everything. They have brushes, they have glue, they've got paints, they've got palettes, they've got 5 different substrates to work on, 2 canvas, 3 panels, scratching tool, all kinds of things. So yeah, message me if you need one of those, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. So good luck assembling your stuff. If you happen to have your things ready, just take a picture of it, and that way we'll also know who's participating, because I can't wait to see who's participating. I have prizes lined up. I have some surprises lined up. I'm really excited about all this. So, oh, let me turn that around. Okay, bye everybody. It was great seeing you, and great participation today, like 20 people. Awesome. And so spread the word. Friday, open studio project day. Okay, bye.